Ja, hejsan, Östen Rönne här. Ja, jag tänkte här nu dela en video. Jag tänkte också göra ett lite kort intro här till den och förklara varför jag tycker den är så viktig. Den här videon är gammal, den är inspelad alltså i slutet på 80-talet tror jag, eller början på 90-talet. Det verkar som att länken, källan då, som jag fick den ifrån, den verkar vara borta. De kanske inte vill att det här ska synas och höras. Vad den här personen som heter Fletcher Prouty, eh, eh, vad han säger. Han säger det här för länge sedan. Han säger det här alltså han pratar historiken. Han är född 1917 och dog 2001. Men han var också chef för lite av hans historia. Chef för Special Operations, specialoperationer då, inom CIA, tror jag att det är. Han har också varit överste i USAs flygvapen, i USAs flygvapen. Han har jobbat för Pentagon i flera år. Han har också jobbat väldigt nära JFK, John F. Kennedy. Men den här videon är på 16 minuter och eftersom det fanns på YouTube så har jag varit tvungen att texta den själv genom ett textningsprogram, och det var inte lätt för det. De översätter fel då programmet från röst till engelsk text och sen från engelsk text till svenska. Då måste man rätta det. Det tog mig faktiskt 5 timmar att göra igår, den här översättningen. Och det kan innebära att det dessutom finns några enstaka fel. Jag tror inte det är så många, men det kan det vara så. Men ni som behärskar engelska språket, ni behöver inte ens titta på texten. Det här är till för de som egentligen då inte behärskar engelska språket så bra. Men det han säger, det är häpnadsväckande med tanke på att han sa det redan då. Det här kan man då översätta egentligen till den händelse som nyligen skedde, där man försökte mörda Donald Trump. Det är därför jag tycker den är så träffsäker. Den här Fletcher Prouty, han avslöjar CIAs. Han har jobbat åt dem alltså, och Pentagon, så att han vet precis vad han snackar om. Men det framgår i videon. Men det är så pass tidigt. Han avslöjar hur de jobbade redan då. Och låt mig säga så här. Jag tror inte att CIA eller Secret Service för den delen, eller kanske FBI också, på något sätt jobbar sämre idag. Alltså typ 30 år drygt senare. Snarare tvärtom. Här pratar han om bland annat hypnos. Han pratar om mind control och liknande. Och olika uppdrag som han har varit på. Som då ledare för Special Operations. Därför är det intressant. Det är en studie i hur man jobbat sedan lång tid tillbaka i USA. Han har också varit kritiker till CIA. Han har gett ut ett par i alla fall böcker om det hela. Alltså han var kritiker sedan han gick i pension, ska jag lägga till då. Han var 84 år när han dog då 2001. Men det är som om ett karbonpapper egentligen på hur man kan ha agerat i fallet mordförsöket på Donald Trump. Jag kommer återkomma efter videon med mina slutsatser. Vad jag är övertygad om vid det här laget. Och det är min teori, det är ingenting annat. Men jag har också delat 8 stycken videos då med Google-textning, svensktextat från Redacted, sen det här skedde. De har varit väldigt duktiga på att researcha. Jag har också delat ett par andra videos som inte är producerade av det förnäma, fantastiskt duktiga teamet på Redacted. Men så ser det ut i alla fall. Och så att den här hyfsat, jag hoppas jag att ni tycker, textade videon med den här forna då CIA-agenten. Den är väldigt, tycker jag själv, intressant att lyssna på och titta på. Framförallt lyssna på vad det igen har att säga. Men som sagt, jag återkommer med en liten slutsats efter videon då. Videon är på 16 minuter och den kommer här.
When there's an assassination, you have to have a lone nut, because a lone nut can kill somebody for no reason. If you admit that 3 or 4 people were involved, or that there was, to use an overworked term, conspiracy, Then you have to say, well, the conspiracy had a reason. Well, they don't ever want to face that reason. What was the reason why Kennedy was killed? What was the reason why King was killed? By having a lone nut, you don't have to ask that question.
And I think all of us that study these assassinations ought to forget some names totally. One name is Oswald. Another one is Sirhan. Another one is Ray. Forget them. Those poor guys were staged into this program. They had nothing to do with the assassination except be the fall guy. And as an assassination studier, student of assassination for 25 years, I tell you frankly, I could write the whole book on assassinations without using any one of those names. They're not relevant, other than as patsies. You know, I don't proclaim that I'm an expert in Martin Luther King's assassination, but I do know things about it that pertain to this cover-up business, which is so important. From either point where the shots might have been fired, and it's been alleged that some were fired from a room on the second floor and others were fired down behind some bushes on the first floor. In either case, the intervening trees had been chopped down. Now, can you imagine this James Earl Ray going out with a hatchet and chopping these trees down before he fired the shot? That's done by people who prepare the ground for the shooter, whoever he is. See, well, that's as good an example as you'll find about how things are done ahead of time. Martin Luther King was registered on the first floor. Somebody went there ahead of time and told the landlady of the motel that he didn't want to be on the first floor, he wanted to be on the second floor. Nobody in King's party had made that contact. You see, that's the advanced planning. Then afterwards, all the things that happened, the chase of Ray halfway around the world and all the other things that came up, are a cover plan which is so complete that even to this day, no one has broken the system completely, and you can't get it into the courts anyway. You see, none of these cases really get into the courts, and when they do, they're very abnormal cases. Consider the case in Los Angeles about the killing of Kennedy. The people most proximate to Kennedy at the time he was killed have never been questioned yet. I traveled to another country to talk to a young lady that was almost leaning on Bobby Kennedy at the time he was shot. She can tell you how he was killed, but the courts have never talked to her. This cover-up pattern is enormous, and it's very effective. It closes everything down.
What's the technique for an assassin once the assassination has been completed? Where do they go? How do they operate then?
Well, obviously the first thing is to bring in the hitman or the hitmen. Usually it's a triangulation affair so that you're sure you have the guns to do the job. You can't always say where your victim's going to be, so you place the guns in the right place and you're ready for it. But, you know, that's the easy part. Then you have to get them out of there. I think if you study, as we have hundreds and hundreds of photographs of these scenes, you'll find that there were certain people, for instance, that didn't run from the area, stood there casually, nothing happened. They have the assurance they're going to be picked up at the proper time and removed from the area. Now, undoubtedly, they're the killers. They're too smart to run and draw attention to it. They're too smart to jump in a car that speeds away. If there is a car that speeds away, that's a cover story. It's like the white Mustang. It's not the one that really did the job. And the press releases that are immediately put out lead you to the man in the sixth floor window, while the man that really did the killing is right down there on the street waiting for somebody to pick him up casually and walk off. And just consider either of the Kennedy cases or the King cases, the thing you notice most is that the police stood with their hands down and did nothing. There were no on-the-spot detectives. There was nobody really looking into the ballistics. There was no one checking any of the things that the police would have gotten into in the first place. So there's where you begin to see the cover-up pattern. Somebody has told the police department, stay away from this. Now, they don't tell them that way. They say, look, because this was Mr. King in town, we have a special group of Secret Service or a special group of whatever here. And so the police think, well, it's covered. We're not needed. But in any event, they're away. Now, in Dallas, I know for a fact myself that there was an Army unit we intended to use in Dallas for protection on the streets, simply to watch everybody, watch the windows, watch everything. The commander of that Army unit had received a call, very simple call, saying, we don't need your unit. He knows there are other units, so he thinks I'm going to use somebody else's unit. The next day, he found out there were no units there. Well, it's too late then, you see. Who made the call to that colonel?
The first person who arrived on the balcony after Dr. King was shot was an undercover policeman. we later discovered that he was working for the CIA. Is it possible that that man could have been placed by the CIA into the Memphis Police Department as a trainee?
Well, I think really to explain why this certain policeman would be the first man on the balcony and that kind of thing, you might turn it the other way around. He might have been the member of the Memphis Police Department that the CIA had trained, or somebody else from the government, FBI had trained, and here we're using a generic term more than we are a specific one. The training they get enables them to perform special jobs like this. For instance, think of other cases when Bremer shot Governor Wallace. Immediately, an investigator went into his apartment in Milwaukee. When an airplane crashed with Howard Hunt's wife in Chicago, something like 70 FBI men immediately went to the wreckage of that plane. I don't know of any other airplane where even any FBI showed up, you know, at the wreckage of it immediately. So when things like this take place, there is training behind it, and it's very skilled training, and it's training with key people. And that's what I meant by saying that by taking a large number of men as, quote, instructors and putting them in the Inter-American Police Academy, you can train members, select members of police establishments from all over the United States, but then they're taught special methods and everything, and mainly they go on your list. They're your contact man. And the contact man is the one who does these things that are, as you described, where the man goes up on a balcony. The first person there seemed to know why he was there and when to be there, things that look like magic otherwise. Why was he there, you see? He had advanced knowledge.
From your experience in government, Fletcher, do you think it conceivable that a secret intelligence unit could have planned and carried out the assassination of Martin Luther King?
You needn't have to include the word intelligence unit. It's just a secret unit. And there's no question about it being a unit. Anybody that thinks today that either Kennedy assassination, either one of them, or the King assassination, and others that we might go into, were done by individuals, just doesn't understand. Doesn't understand the business at all. The easiest way to see that the program is laid on in a team effort, carefully planned and carried out, begins after the murder. That the cover-up program, the things that take place, the lawyers that are hired, the courts and the way they go after it, the Warren Commission itself, things like that in all these cases, just show you right away that there's a good-sized program operating these things, not 2 or 3 individuals. There's just no way. Now, where these reside, where they begin, who says let's do it, that's pretty hard to know because you're not ever going to find that out. That's, again, part of the package. It's concealed. But the work is carried out by people who are skilled and know these jobs, and they perform this work internationally. It's not just on the streets in this country. If the decision is made at some level or some point that involves an assassination, either within the United States or outside, the group involved, first of all, is in a very high position, and secondly, very limited in numbers. In most cases, the people that are called upon to do this have a good bit of training. They have the skills, they have special equipment, and they have a lot of support. And the thing that people should understand is the support they need really comes after the shots have been fired. How to get them out of there and how to cover the thing so people don't realize that a team of gunmen did the job. I certainly knew of plans that were intended to bring about an assassination. For example, in the case of Castro. So they created an organization called Mongoose. Mongoose was the cover word for it. Now, the objective of the Mongoose program was to assassinate Castro by any means. We even used mafia hitmen, skilled mechanics, skilled killers. We used poisoned things. We used all kinds of... There's a lady that used to be a friend of Castro's, I think, that said she was being sent back there to feed him some pills or something that would kill him, and on and on and on, all kinds of things. But here's what we need to get from the format of that story, is that Mongoose is an organization created by the United States government to commit assassinations. Never mind Castro. It was created for assassinations. Now, these people are selected, trained, equipped for that purpose, to get in there and shoot somebody and get out. And the getting out part is the hard part. That's where they need the rest of the organization. The hitmen are probably 4 or 5 experienced people that can do the job from any angle with any weapon and do it right. But to get them out of there and what the patterns are and how you're going to do it is a very intricate thing. So you have to have a trained program. And in this case, we called it Mongoose. Now, there's no reason to believe that Mongoose ended when somebody decided that, well, we're not going to kill Castro this year, we'll let it go. But Mongoose is an Assassination Incorporated organization.
Can you just tell us what you know about the CIA's use of hypnosis in manipulating operatives?
And every effort possible is going into the mind control business. And the CIA is very active in that. Our MK Ultra program was pressing the limits of mind control.
To your knowledge, has it ever included hypnotizing assassins who would then carry out the job without really knowing what they were doing and be programmed to do that?
Well, as you know, hypnosis is used to make people do a lot of things. And the business of mind control with respect to conditioning assassins and conditioning people to other things is universal. We all know that. And there's no... the action of these people who are involved in assassinations, everything from Hinckley to James Earl Ray, we'll say, and others like that, Sirhan, and all these people are not normal. Something odd happened to them because, first of all, 20 years, 25 years have passed, and some of these people are still in this state that is not exactly normal. I think they were submitted to pretty heavy doses of certain kind of drugs or medicines, and probably to hypnosis and other devices for mind control. It's a very advanced art.
So it's not an entire coincidence that Ray had books about hypnotism in his apartment when he was, at the time that after the assassination they were found. And also Sirhan had books about it, hypnotism as well, I believe. Do you think that's not entirely coincidental?
Well, and of course, this business of having books in his apartment and having kept a diary and all this, I find that is simply part of the trade, part of the assassination trade. All these lone nuts that kill somebody all keep diaries, and they're all very strange little diaries and that kind of thing. I think that's all created. I don't think they had the diary. I think that I've read many of them very, very carefully. I agree with Gore Vidal that they appear to be written by some central office that knows how to write these diaries. So the books they kept, the things they went through, are really immaterial to the basic facts of the assassination.
Can you tell us something about the secret team? Who are the secret team? Whether there are people still around today that you knew in the 60s? And what kind of activities they were involved in?
Actually, the book I wrote called The Secret Team is autobiographical. It explains my 9 years' work in the Pentagon in this kind of business. Actually, I had been in intelligence-type work long before I came to the Pentagon. I was at the Cairo Conference in 1943 and the Tehran Conference in 1943 when there were some very important secret operations carried out. I was in the Soviet Union in 1944 and in Turkey in 1944. So that through all this period, beginning way back in the 40s, it was clear that even though I was working close to men like Winston Churchill, I lived right across the street from him once when he was in Marrakech and so on, you would see that they would be carrying out some kind of instruction. I've worked in a room like this with Alan Dulles, right at home with him, with John Foster Dulles right there, and listened to the two of them talking about how we're going to do this or how we're going to do that. And then I've seen John Foster Dulles pick up the telephone and call somebody overseas. And you'd realize they're taking an input, taking instructions. They're not the top men. There is a high cabal, the words that Churchill used, that runs things. Now, we'll never describe those people. Their greatest strength is their anonymity, and they know that. Now, at lower levels, there are secret teams in the sense that governments or parts of governments don't stop them. As we see through this whole Iran hostage exchange thing, the Germans were involved, the Israelis were involved, the Swiss were involved, the Swedish were involved, Otto Palmer was involved, the British were involved, all around the world. The South Koreans were involved. Well, what kind of a team is there that can be assembled to do a job like the hostage exchange and selling arms to Iran and so on and so on. That's not any part of one government, but it's a most effective organization. So the closer you get to this type of operation and the more years you spend in this kind of operation, you recognize that there is a secret team that even governmental structures does not encompass. It's a very powerful, large organization. The people at the top are faceless. We will never know them. And I don't put people like Ronald Reagan or Winston Churchill or Franklin Roosevelt at the top. They're people above them.
Ja, då så. Det var den videon. Jag hoppas att ni fann den intressant. Det gjorde i alla fall jag. Och det var därför jag ville dela den. Inte minst med tanke på att den är gjord för typ drygt 30 år sedan. Men som jag sa i min inledning innan videon, att jag tror inte att djupa staten i USA, som stavas i princip CIA och klart en hel del annat också, men att de har blivit sämre på att ha sina lömska metoder för att röja folk ur vägen och för att sina påverkansoperationer. Så att nu fick jag ett meddelande på Skype samtidigt här. Jag fortsätter att prata här. Min uppfattning efter att jag sett och delat också 8 stycken videos utav Redacted som jag har lagt ut, och de är svensktextade, Google-textade. Hoppas ni tittar på dem om ni är intresserade av det här. De är väldigt, väldigt duktiga journalister, måste jag säga, hela deras team. Jag har lagt ut ett par stycken till, jag kommer lägga ut några fler. Bland annat från ABC News Australia och ytterligare en annan då. Analys då, och det är vittnesmål från de som var på platsen, va? Och foton och ena med det tredje. På platsen där mordförsöket på Trump skedde. Då ska jag summera vad jag anser låg bakom, utan att nämna detaljer, för det vet jag såklart inte. Men den här så att säga lite förståndshandikappade mer eller mindre killen då som man sköt ihjäl, vad han nu hette, jag kommer faktiskt inte ihåg riktigt, men ni vet, den här 20-åriga grabben, han sköt inte, han försökte inte skjuta Trump, påstår jag. Han var det offret som och jag tror de som ligger bakom det här, det är CIA. Det finns en del andra prickskyttar och liknande inom vissa garden, som också den här forna CIA-agenten nämner då, den här Fletcher Prouty i den här videon. Men jag tror ändå att det är CIA, för att Trump har ju sin politik som han salufört, som han tänker införa då om han blir president. Han har pratat om att dra sig ur NATO, han har pratat om att skapa fred. Allt här går emot den djupa staten som måste ha igång krigsmaskineriet bland annat. Och mycket annat, klimatkatastrof, hot och liknande. Tvångsvaccinering och liknande. Och det har han sagt nej till. Och då är han ett hot mot djupa staten i USA. Och dit hör ju då bland annat CIA. Det finns förgreningar såklart ut till även FBI, till Secret Service och så vidare. Det här nämner han faktiskt också återigen i den här videon. Jag tycker den är väldigt, väldigt tankvärd och intressant att lyssna på. Han vart ju liksom, kan man säga, på äldre dag en whistleblower, men den här Fletcher Prouty, han är väldigt övertygande. Och han har skrivit någon bok i alla fall som finns på nätet. Va? Jag kommer i beskrivningsfältet under den här videon kommer jag bifoga då länken till alla länkar, ska jag försöka få dit i alla fall, som jag har textat och Redacteds analyser från samma egentligen då stund som han blev skjuten då, Trump. För det blev han ju, men det här var ett misslyckande från CIA. De räknar med att döda honom helt enkelt. Det var alltså typ plan C. Man har inte lyckats med allt annat som förtal och liknande. Utan så nu får man tillämpa plan D och F, eller vad det blir för någonting. D, E och F. Men så är det, va. De misslyckas för att han vände på huvudet så här för att titta på en prompter. Tack vare det när han sköt det skottet, och det var inte den här stackars 20-åringen. Han var bara en lakej för att skylla på honom helt enkelt. Han var en grindvakt, eller vad säga. Det var inte alls, utan han var ju vad brukar man kalla för, bulvan? Inte heller, men ja, jag hittar inte ordet. Ni förstår vad jag menar. Så det ska framstå som att det var han som försökte skjuta Trump, och meningen var att Trump skulle dö. Den riktiga skytten låg längre bak, och där finns beskrivet väldigt bra med olika uträkningar på Redacteds filmer som jag bifogar, som jag sa, i länken under. Vill ni veta mer om den här Fletcher Prouty ska jag lägga en länk till Wikipedia också. Kan läsa mer om honom där. Ni kan skriva in hans namn också på bara i browsern, så får ni upp en hel del grejer som inte finns på YouTube. För YouTube bannar en del av vad han har sagt då, eftersom han är ett hot mot systemet. Så att det ringer telefon, jag ska bara stänga av den och så ska jag avsluta det här. Och då är det så här då att så jag anser ju att det var en statskupp, kan man säga, anordnad av staten, faktiskt själv, CIA, och den misslyckades. De brukar inte misslyckas, va? Men man såg ju också på Secret Service själva de här livvakterna, va? De har ju så här inkluderande politik, va? Som de tar in då tjejer som är 1,55 långa, va? Som de duckar istället för kulorna istället för att skydda presidenten, va? Så här är det, va? Det är bara att titta på Secret Service hemsida, så ser man ju liksom vilken politik de har, va? Det är viktigt att vara politiskt korrekt, va? Än att vara en bra livvakt, va? Ja, nåväl, jag kan nästan stanna där, va? Det är min uppfattning. Han som varit skjuten har varit mördad av CIA, alltså han som låg på taket. Det var CIA som försökte mörda Trump, men de misslyckades. Det här är mitt take på det hela, och jag bygger mycket på bland annat då Redacteds olika videos, men även då den här Fletcher Prouty som jag delade idag här nu då. Jag hoppas ni finner det intressant. Det här påverkar egentligen, det här är en beskrivning av hur världspolitiken, hur den ser ut, den djupa staten i alla länder, inklusive Sverige, va? Så att tänk på det. Hoppas att det var intressant för er att ta del av, så hörs vi vidare. Tack och hej!